And so you have these two very stark, very different examples. The French, who ran massive deficits for a number of years, the UK, the British, who would run deficits but bring them back down and eventually pay them off, run primary surpluses. And then you take those two case studies and you compare them to the U.S. as a whole, and you say, well, folks, here's the good news. The good news, up through 2000, we were like the UK. We ran primary deficits during wars. We brought them down. Looked great. But since 2000, we're looking a lot like the French. So I'm like, wow, George and Tom, thanks a lot. That's just a very depressing message out of the gate.
Well, I should say, so Tom gave this paper at a conference in December of 2024, and his job was not to be boring. And so,
okay.
You got to kind of come out and be punchy. But I do think, I mean, one point we do want to make is that for a long time, the U.S. operated under this fiscal rule that looked very much like the British. And Tom Sargent and I attributed this fiscal rule. We credit Albert Gallatin, Thomas Jefferson's Secretary of the Treasury, but as you recognize, it's really just a variation on Robert Barro's tax smoothing model. That basically during peacetime, you run something close to a balanced budget. And then when there's a large, exogenous expenditure surge, usually due to a war, you want to debt finance that. Taxes should go up by at least enough to cover the interest expenses on the new debt. And then after the war, what we tend to see happen, and this isn't exactly in the Barro model, but these shocks tend to have have a permanent component to them. That spending doesn't come down to its pre-war level. That most of these shocks are both transitory and persistent. But after the war, so government spending comes down, but taxes remain high enough so that after the war we run surpluses. So we refer to this as a law of gravity, as you mentioned there. Now, what I'll note is that, after, say, World War I and World War II, we had large inflations, and we still, we had to pay for it partly through giving bondholders low returns. But nowadays, this fiscal rule seems to no longer hold. We weren't running a balanced budget before COVID. COVID hits. It's a large exogenous shock. We expect it to be transitory. We debt finance our response to it, which makes perfect sense. But tax revenue doesn't go up at all. That's what's sort of like, whoa, we don't raise taxes. Now, partly raising taxes during a pandemic probably is a bad idea when you're telling people to stay home and not work. But then afterwards, after COVID, you see that this shock has both a transitory and a permanent component. So government spending has gone up. A tax revenue hasn't gone up. And so unlike the British experience that you point out, unlike World War I or World War II or prior wars, post-war, we're running large deficits, not surpluses.